Hey guys, what's up? It's Collegio. Today I'm going to talk about Donald Trump, Iran, Israel. What is going on in the president's mind? Is this the end of the Make America Great Again movement, or is it something else entirely? I'm going to take an ultra-realist view of where I think the president's mind is on this. By the way, this is an interesting topic because if you look at the history of foreign policy over the last 20 years, you'll see that Republicans have made a huge 180, all right? 20 years ago, President Bush in the 2005 inauguration talked about bringing democracy to the world. And 20 years later, Republicans go and nominate someone who is arguably the most isolationist of the candidates in the primary pack, which is Donald Trump. All right. What's going on here? Well, what's interesting about it is that Republicans have actually shifted their foreign policy views quite a bit over the last 20 years, 50 years, 100 years. It's remarkable, and it happens more often than you think. So I want to give a little bit of history here because I think it's instructive. We like to think of ideologies as being fixed, but they're not. They're far more often flexible more flexible than you might think. If you go back to the United States foreign policy in the 19th century, one of the things that George Washington had said in the end of the 18th century was that we were blessed by the Atlantic Ocean. It would keep us out of foreign entanglements in Europe, right? It was a blessing to not have to get involved in European wars. But by the late 1890s, the United States had become so powerful economically, it was beginning to get powerful from an international standpoint. And if you look at what happened in the presidency of William McKinley in 1896, from 1896 to 1900, the United States began to flex internationally. We formed the Panama Canal Zone, all right? We made the deal to suddenly be the arbiter of shipping across the two oceans, right? Spanish-American War, 1898, suddenly we won a war that basically ended Spain's presence in the Western Hemisphere. It gave the United States territories of Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Marianas Islands, as well as the Philippines, all the way on the other side of the earth, okay? As well as Cuba as a protectorate. President Theodore Roosevelt in the early 1900s was out in the world negotiating the end of wars between the Russians and the Japanese, okay? So that was the beginning of a huge push, especially within the Republican Party, to be interventionist minded, all right? To be leading the world. Now, in the lead up to World War I, there was a split. There wasn't a lot of certainty that we should be getting involved in European entanglements. Of course, once we got involved in the war, there was a unity behind it. But by President Warren Harding's election in 1920, there was this refrain for a return to normalcy. And what that meant was getting out of the world's affairs, getting back to what was best in America. And the United States in the 20s and 30s, led by Republicans like Senator Henry Cabot Lodge, were de facto isolationists. They were pushing for a much more restrained foreign policy in the world. That all ended on December 7, 1941 with Pearl Harbor. There was a lot of national unity to fight a two-front war, but after World War II, suddenly it was the Republicans who were pushing containment policy, which was very interventionist all across the globe, to do whatever it took to contain communism, okay? So if you look at the presidencies of Nixon, if you go back to Douglas MacArthur, who actually wanted to get involved in the Chinese Civil War in the late 1940s, spoke at the Republican convention in the late 1940s, okay? Ronald Reagan was incredibly interventionist with regard to a containment policy to contain Russia and Soviet communism. By the end of the Cold War, there was this big question. What is U.S. foreign policy? Does America have a foreign policy now that the Russia threat is gone? There were leaders who wanted the United States to continue to take a leading role in the world. The elite Republicans went to war in Iraq in 1991, Operation Desert Storm, showed off all the incredible American military might, all right? But there were questions in the 1990s. Should we get involved in Bosnia? Should we get involved in Rwanda? And Republicans, for the most part, were torn. There were some who wanted to take an active role, but there were many more at the grassroots level who were kind of saying, you know what, those are Europe's problems, we should stay out. Again, a major world event changes this. September 11th, suddenly the United States is fighting two wars, in Afghanistan and Iraq. It was a Republican president who was leading the charge on both of those. President Bush in 2005, his inauguration address, talked about bringing democracy to the world, all right? And yet, 20 years later, President Trump is elected, and he's talking about an end to forever wars, an end to stupid wars, which a lot of people took to mean that the Make America Great movement, MAGA, was actually more of an isolationist bent. Now, one of the things that I've said about Donald Trump repeatedly is that the frameworks that we use to think about American politics don't really apply to him very well. He's not a traditional Republican. He's not a traditional conservative. What is he then? I've always said, if you go back and look at my videos, that Donald Trump his ideology is to get the best deal. All right? And what I think happened in Iran and Israel over the last several weeks is that a series of events happened that presented a series of opportunities. All right. And if you're Donald Trump and you're looking for the best deal always, whether that's for himself, whether that's for his kids, whether that's for Trump Corporation, whether that's for the United States of America, I think he was presented with an opportunity that many American presidents have been presented with, which is taking down the Iran nuclear facilities. The Pentagon has war plans for everything. These war plans to use a bunker-busting missile to destroy Iran's bunkers underneath the earth where all their nuclear scientists are working and where all the centrifuges are located and all of that, those plans have been there, but we've never had the opportunity to use them. So Trump, while he doesn't want to get involved internationally, was suddenly presented with an opportunity to drop 20 or so bombs and potentially get rid of the Iranian nuclear program. Whether we did that or not doesn't matter, but the mindset is Trump was presented with a deal. And I think that he saw an opportunity to take something that he thought was high value without a huge amount of cost, and he took it. Again, I don't think that he's interventionist. I don't think that he's particularly isolationist. I think that he's an opportunist. And I think that he saw an opportunity and he took it. Now he's talking about regime change, all right? Goodness. I mean, there are people with their hair on fire. My gosh, is this the end of the MAGA movement? All right, but if you're Donald Trump and you're thinking about if Iran's mullahs are up against the ropes right now and there's a little bit that we can do to end this forever, shouldn't we take that opportunity? That's how Trump is calculating this. He's not thinking in terms of should we not be involved internationally? Should we be engaging internationally? He's thinking about the opportunity in the minute. And the opportunity in the minute is that the Iranian mullahs are in the weakest position that they've been since they took power in 1979. And there may be an opportunity to get rid of them forever. All right. Now, whether or not that's possible, that's a totally different question. But it is a departure from the normal framework of isolationist, interventionist that we use to describe people. It's almost a return to realism, a narrow, self-interested look at the world. What is good for the United States? Is there an opportunity to get rid of the Iranian government without costing U.S. lives? Can we do this with some bombs? I think that those are the calculations that the president is making today. And it's making it very, very difficult for people because we don't know, because we don't deal with non-framework thinking. People just have a hard time understanding what he's talking about. Now, for the Republicans who are in these frameworks, the super, super aggressive wing, like Lindsey Graham and Tom Cotton, two senators, the two super aggressive interventionist senators, or kind of the isolationist wing, your Steve Bannon, your Tucker Carlson, all right? It looks like the interventionist people are winning right now. Again, I don't think that Trump's an interventionist, though. I think he saw an interventionist opportunity, and who knows what that's going to look like a year from now. I think that Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson might be giving high fives on something he stays out of next year, all right? We don't know. But what I do think is that for Trump, these old frameworks don't really work, and that's why he's approaching things differently. He's not approaching things from the way that we're used to seeing them. So that's my analysis. Let me know what you think. We'd love to hear what you say in a comment, and thank you for watching.